For plebs, by plebs, dropping the Bitcoin only signal. Pleb Underground. Welcome everyone to the Pleb Underground.
PUG EP50, still swift with the shift key, not adrift with the grift C. We're all close, there's no rift C, not gunning for the IPO, but we're still strapped in. Real pleb media, not run by Clipston. Always reloading, Phil puts the clips in, fill up the mag, unload it with swag. A new Bitcoin feature, low time preference creature. Privacy is about trying to be discreet. Like Bitcoin privacy, I'm never complete. XO set increasing, got a few loose ends. Shout out to Canada and my few moose friends out in the outback, found space for discretion. Block each shitcoiner so they can't bank your impression. Back in London town, quick break to clown. Up high on the balcony, up fly with the falconry, show her the sights, culinary delights, taste on the tip of her tongue, wet like a towel that needs a wrung. Batman begins, but the Joker returns. She's in a catsuit, and her choker still burns. In and out, bespoke her returns. She keeps coming back. Teardrops, no massive attack. Gravity, each massive attract. Forever falling, perpetual contact. Bound forever, perpetual contract. Truth never dies, perpetual fact. Only if you verify each time you transact. In a comfy chair while they bring me the fizz, wavy and curly but never with frizz. TikTok next block, swipe next buck. Conversation back and forth it has a shape, together you morph it. Sunshine in a bag, one day make it rain. Always beauty on, get pissed, start a blockchain. Put personal development on main, it's time to make Bitcoin sexy again. Bitcoin's the best, ain't no topping it. Represent, yeah, they're copying it. When moon, we'll be popping it. Censorship resistant, ain't no stopping it. Once upon a time I had a plebnet life. kycjelly.com, voice the plebnet strife. Cuts through butter like a plebnet knife. Meet Mads, our guest, my plebnet wife.
Walton, absolutely awesome. And in case you guys didn't understand, our special guest, fellow Bitcoiner and pleb, we've got Mads. Mads, thank you so much for joining us on Pleb Underground. This is cool.
Hey guys, yeah, happy to be here. And I almost wore the same shirt, but I didn't know that y'all were both wearing it.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. There aren't many of these shirts in existence. Yeah,
I did think about it.
Very cool.
So,
appreciate that.
It's a good one.
We appreciate the support. All right, well, we are going to move on over to the numbers.
Yeah, the numbers brought to us by Time Chain Stat and Time Chain Calendar. What do they look like this week, Phil?
At the time of this recording, the block height is 803,000, right on the fiat Bitcoin exchange, 29,440. The total public Lightning capacity, 4,752.20 BTC. Moscow time, 3396. And the fastest fee, take a look at this, single digits, Walton, 8 sats per VByte. That's pretty crazy, pretty crazy. And of course, our famous chain rewrite days, 744. That's right, Bitcoin network, very secure.
What I like was the just general trend of hash rate just increasing. Like, I mean, yeah, it goes like this, but it's what do the miners know? Why do they keep plugging in more miners? Like, what, you know, if the price is, you know, doing this, why do the miners keep plugging in more? Doesn't make sense, right?
Shouldn't we be having a miner death spiral right now? Because
yeah,
ordinals are pretty much dead, right? So there should be miner death spiral now. I remember the first time I actually heard that piece of FUD in 2018. I mean, I barely understood, you know.
Yeah, and you said the fee rate's really low, so no fees, right, Phil? No fees. Like, what are they doing? The miners must be starving out there. Like,
yeah, they are. They're totally starving.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I mean, you can't eat corn, right?
No, you can't eat it. All right. Let's take a look. We've got some pretty interesting numbers articles here. Let's take a look. This is an image that has gone around. I've seen it for quite a few years now. I mean, obviously, it's, you know, I mean, they're looking at housing prices from like the 1950s. Okay. But take a look at this. This is a tweet from Shaquille Oatmeal. These were all around $35,000 when adjusted for inflation. Good luck trying to buy a house for $35K today. You'd be lucky to get one for $250K. And I mean, if you take a look at these homes, like, I mean, look at these prices. Like, look at this. This is a 2-story house. This is more than likely over 2,000 square feet. And you're talking about $1,898 to buy the house. We're not talking about a monthly rent payment.
Yeah, Phil, I had a similar story. my grandfather bought, I think, a couple, or great grandfather bought a couple of houses in London, 100 years ago, whatever it was, or 80 years ago, maybe 60. I don't know. Like, at least more. I think at least like 1950 or earlier or something like this. So 70. Let's say 70 years ago for like. Or maybe even earlier, I don't know, for like $3,000, and then 50 years later, the same house is 300 grand, and now it's 3 million. Yeah. In a century, it's gone from 3,000 to 3 million.
And guys, like, I mean, as we talk about this, right, it's not because these houses are really gaining in value. It's because our purchasing power is diminishing. Now, this all goes somewhere because, anyways, today I put out a tweet, okay, because look, we get a lot of these doom and gloom influencers, okay? And so I put out a tweet. Doom and gloom influencers are ignoring historical mortgage rates. Now, we're going to put aside the fact that our purchasing power is a piece of crap, okay? And it just keeps getting worse and worse. But take a look at the mortgage rates, because you have people screaming and shouting that today there's no way you're going to be able to afford a 7% mortgage and this and that. And take a look at the mortgage rates, 1980 to 1985. All right, look at these rates, 13%, 16%, 13%. I mean, look, this is...
Yeah, but Phil, what was the multiple of the value of the house versus earnings at the time? Because that's what's really changed.
Okay, so there you go, right? So again, this is why I don't... This is exactly the point, Walton, okay? It's... The reality is that the problem has nothing to do with the interest rates. The interest rates are not like, this is not like end of the financial system type of scenario. This isn't like hyperinflation numbers where all of a sudden Weimar Germany, everything's falling apart. Okay. Like these numbers are totally sustainable. The real problem is our purchasing power, right? Like the fact that like today what you can get for $300,000 or $500,000 compared to what you could get back then. That's, I think, to me, like, anyways, that's the difference. So I do appreciate you, Walton, pointing that out, because it is. And all these tricks, all of these tricks are meant to blind us from the purchasing power loss. Like that's all it is.
But the reason why that works, Phil, is because certainly I don't know the stats for the United States, but in the United Kingdom, if you look at the wealth distribution, the bottom 10% essentially have negative or zero wealth. The next 7 deciles, so from 10 up to 80, the majority of their wealth is their home, and then the top 20%. It's they have their house plus other financial assets plus other things, etc. But for 70% of the population, their home is their primary asset, like their like a biggest proportion of all of their assets, like majority of their assets. And so it's a huge political pawn to pump the price of house prices, because it makes a vast swathe of the population think they're wealthier on paper. And what that means is they're able to borrow more, so they become more indebted to the fiat system, and they're more trapped in the fiat system. And this is ultimately kind of the biggest problem, right? But you get incentivized to kind of dig further into something that can be dangerous, right? Like accumulating debt can really be catastrophic for many people.
Absolutely. Mads, I really want your thoughts on this. I mean, are you a homeowner? I mean, you don't have to answer that question.
Yeah, I own my house, and I've seen this happen. Like, yes, there's the scale of like seeing houses for $1,000-something, but then there's my reality, which is I probably started looking for a house in 2015, and my neighborhood that I wanted to be in, I felt like I'd already missed the boat on like getting in at a decent price, and since my friends had graduated and moved back to where I live and bought their houses in this neighborhood, the prices had gone up like $50,000 or more a house. And now my house, like if I just sold it straight back, I think $150,000 to $200,000 like change in like the price of what my house has gone up. Like that's how it's so much more. All the houses in my neighborhood are selling for so much more, and some people are excited, but I'm like, well, where are you going to go buy another house where like they're more expensive everywhere. So I don't know. It's crazy though, because you see the price point of your house like growing, $100,000 more and more, like over what it was, and that seems like huge in a few years, but that just seems really bad to me. I don't know. I don't love it.
Great point, right? Where else do you move to? Wherever else has gone up by, like, you don't actually win by it going up unless you borrow more. In which case, it's you're betting, aren't you?
Yeah, nothing's happened to make my neighborhood like way hundreds of thousands of dollars in price cost better per house. It's just everywhere. I mean, anywhere else you go, you're gonna be paying more. So I'm just glad that now I look back and I'm like, okay, I'm glad I bought my house in like 2016 or so when I did, because now it's so much more and it's still the same house. Like the houses have not changed. So
the bones have gotten older.
Yeah, really. They've just gotten older. And I am very attached to my closet. I built it myself, and I know nowhere else has as nice of a closet. And so I can't move anywhere. Actually, I literally had a dream about Bitcoin going up in price, us getting a nicer house, but I was like crying because I didn't have as good of a closet there, even though I had like 10 more bedrooms. But yeah, so I'm going to hold on to this where I live for a while, because I don't want to get in on, I don't want to buy another house right now. It just feels like pouring out dollars. I mean, that's what's happening everywhere.
I think there's a lot to be said for the closet. I can vouch for that. We actually just had our closets redone, and part of the reason why was because every single time I opened the door, it was just depressing. It was like this absolutely awful closet, and people don't realize how important having proper storage space is for a home. So even though
I just love my closet.
I totally agree.
I would love to like go down inside, like I would love not to need as much space in my closets, but for now it's what I need and I love it. So yeah, I'm very attached now to this house since I put my time into building it out like that.
Very cool. I do want to explain this one last piece about this before we move on to the other piece of the numbers, where we dive into some plebnet numbers, I think, with you. But essentially, the only thing you can do, okay, like what you're talking about, the rising house values and where you're supposed to go, because essentially this has already happened, right? Like cities weren't cities to begin with, right? Like the land valuations for cities grew as more and more people wanted to, live over there, and supply and demand. So essentially what ends up happening is that your area, right, further out of the city gets more saturated, okay, which means the only thing you can feasibly do is move even further away to an unsaturated area that isn't going to have the amenities that you necessarily want. You'll pay a lot less for your house, but you're more than likely there's gonna be a trade-off. So it does put people in a tough position, right? So what ends up happening is we're like, no, I'm happy where I'm living and I'm going to stay here, So it's definitely tough, but I do have to say that is the other side of the coin. That is something that people can do. I was able to do that myself, relocating from Massachusetts to Florida. Yeah, and I also downsized. So, like that was also part of it, right? Like in some cases, you might want to downsize the house too. Anyways, this wraps up the numbers, and we are going to move on over to the Fireside Chat. The Fireside Chat is brought to you by CypherSafe. Check them out, CypherSafe.io. You need a reliable way to store your seed. It doesn't matter whether you're using single sig or multi-sig. You need a seed plate that is virtually indestructible. Take a look at the all-new Cypher Grid, and it comes complete with an awesome little punch tool. That's CypherSafe.io. Check them out for the awesome Cypher Grid. If you appreciate fine, high-quality Bitcoin art, take a look at the Bitcoin Rouleau Triangle, made of 16 ounces of titanium. Absolutely beautiful quality and craftsmanship. Check it out at CypherSafe.io. That is the Bitcoin Rouleau Triangle. All right. For the Fireside Chat, we've got Madeline. So, Madeline, you're in the hot seat, and I don't know anything really about PlebNet. Walton has mentioned PlebNet on several occasions. met
so
you
I
at the
call
Bitcoin conference.
Matt my plebnet wife.
That's right.
Because there were about I don't know 25 people in the early days of plebnet, and me and Mads were part of that group. And we've been good friends since, and we look after each other at conferences to make sure that we're at the best parties, or not without drinks, that sort of thing. Important duties. Yeah.
I appreciate that. So Mads, tell us about plebnet. Like, why did this start? And
Yeah, well, I feel like Walton and I were a bunch of people on Clubhouse back like middle of COVID stuff, and
So it was late April 2021, early May.
yeah, like, and leading up to that too, I loved like hearing other Bitcoiners for the first time. That was my first time to have any communication with like other. I didn't know about Bitcoin Twitter, so I was just kind of living in a hole in Alabama, and talked to my dad and some about it occasionally, but that's it until Clubhouse. So that was pretty exciting to hear like other people excited about Bitcoin, and I was learning a ton. A bunch of people kept telling us that like anyone could run a lightning node, and I think I was kind of wanting to like prove that, like since I am very not technical, I bought a computer and then I bought a Raspberry Pi, and then I had to learn what that was, and to running lightning node. And now
So Mads, do you think anyone can run a lightning node?
Yes, I believe that like I am the like poster child of anyone can run a lightning node. So, and with people's help. I mean, Walton was one of many people I asked like questions to. I feel like we were doing it at the same time. So if like I had something
come up, study buddies.
Yeah, I would just, check with Walton to see. I felt like he would do more research and verify stuff faster. So I just make sure with him to see like, oh, is this what I'm supposed to do? I'm really going to type this into my node and just press enter and see what happens. And yeah, it was really cool. I'm still running my node. I love it. Just opened up some channels this week. I was really sad I opened them up. I feel like when the fees were a little higher the other day, but I'll live. So it's been good. I really enjoy it. I've loved learning about computer things.
All right, Mads, I'm gonna have to connect my node to yours. My node is pitiful. I used to have a node with 35 channels on it, and it was great. It was great. I was connected to so many people, and now I'm just connected to one person, and it's just me and full throttle hodl just out in an island, with like a channel to each other going nowhere.
Yeah. You need some more connections.
I need more connections. I'll hit you up after the show. But let me ask you this. I guess what was because now that you told me that you see yourself as kind of like this, the barrier to entry, I need to know what was the most difficult aspect of learning how to set up a node in your opinion? Like what was the hardest, I guess, mental hurdle? I guess that's more the question. What was
mentally,
the mental hurdle?
The hurdle was really like knowing. I mean, the whole reason I did it was because I couldn't picture in my head. I'm very visual, and I couldn't like visualize what people were talking about with lightning. And so to get over that mental hurdle, I was just decided to run a node. That's how I learned what it does. I spent forever trying to figure out like how to get like sats into my lightning wallet for my node. I didn't know that just opening up a channel on chain then like becomes your lightning sats. Like that, those little things I asked probably like 10 times, and I feel like people didn't know what I was even asking, because it's so obvious once you've done it and like opened a channel and that those sats that were on chain now become your lightning balance on your node. But that was very confusing to me. And then just one hurdle, the probably thing I spent the longest on, sadly, was just trying to plug my node in. I followed like a BTC sessions tutorial on running a Raspberry Blitz, which is what I do.
Yeah.
And I ordered all the parts, except for I didn't order all the parts. I was missing the Ethernet cord. I could not figure out where to plug all the cords into the node and get them plugged into my like power and internet. That just took me like way too long. So yeah, that was but once I got it plugged in, it's been good since. I'm very not technical. So yeah, I loved learning all the technical stuff though. Like I love knowing how to do command line and things like that.
That was actually what I was going to ask you next was how did you find doing command line work? Because I mean, for some of us that are technical, command line is just, second nature. You're like, all right, I have to go do this at the command line. Like, how did you feel about that?
I think I like took photos of it when just pulling up like command prompts, of like to show my family what I was doing on my computer because it looks super hackery. And then I I was really excited about that. And I don't know command prompt, like I don't know all the prompts and things, but like this week I actually changed something in my L&D conf, and this happens every time I seem to change that. You have to update, or restart your Lightning or L&D whenever you update your L&D conf file. And somehow every time I make any edit to it, I randomly put a letter somewhere in there, or I press enter on a random line, and it takes me a little while to figure out where that line is. But I figured it out. I hit enter the other day in the middle of a line, so just to go and fix that before I could get going again. But yeah, it's I think maybe because I knew so little, I was a little fearless with it. Maybe if I'd known how catastrophic some commands I could be, I'd be more careful.
So what you're saying is that Lightning is reckless. Yeah. And I just want to point out, you said something very interesting that I think a lot of newer people to the space may not be aware of, but the do-it-yourself Lightning node, the Raspy Blitz, right? This has been around for several years. Back in 2018, for the most part, that was essentially the only do-it-yourself node that there was. There was also the Raspy Bolt, which was a little bit more having to learn how to use compile scripts. But Raspy Blitz was the first one, at least in my eyes or to my knowledge, that was a little bit more user-friendly, right? Like you went through a command line setup, but it was still a little bit more user-friendly than having to compile your own scripts. And I think that I
loved it too.
Right?
I kind of asked a ton of people because I was really confused about what it meant to just use Umbrel or just use Raspy Blitz or just use Start Nines setup. Like I had no idea. All these words meant nothing to me. And I asked a bunch of people random questions about it and somehow landed on Raspy Blitz is what my setup would be. Yeah. And in the early days of PlebNet, I think there were 2 or 3 of us running Raspy Blitz and everyone else was running Umbrel, and in the very beginning. And I'm glad I did it this way because it was a little bit harder and I wasn't as afraid to go into command line when there's an Umbrel update and everyone had to go do something in command line and everyone would freak out for a day in PlebNet on the Telegram group. I was I've already, I kind of knew a little bit more there, or I was just more used to that's how you turn it on whenever I want to connect with my node, I go through command line anyway. So yeah, I'm really glad I did it that way. It's pretty cool.
It sounds like you're saying with Bitcoin that if you try and have a go, maybe you can learn how to do it, and that's kind of the core of it, right? I think a lot of people don't just make the effort to go and learn something, to go and pursue it, to persist that when they get to hurdles, getting over them in you're going to try and complete this thing because it's important. A lot of people just give up on when there's resistance.
Yeah, I had a lot of time on my hands and it was tough. But fortunately PlebNet was such a great thing. It was mainly just a way to connect with other people setting up and running their nodes. And that gave me access to pretty much anyone I needed to get help from. It was, and that was kind of the first thing, for me in the technical world. There are a lot of people that are from technical companies, even if they're not technical themselves, that are just used to doing stuff, being a tester of a beta version of something. and giving feedback to the people that make it. I was never exposed to that before. So a lot of the people that were like building or working on L&D, working on, is it Core Lightning now, or is it Core Lightning, which was C Lightning? You know, people building
Core Lightning, Lightning,
people building Umbrel, Raspberry Blitz, all the like people building the stuff that we were using. You know, we had access to. A lot of them were in PlebNet, or PlebNet people had a connection to them, and so I could just get my questions answered and give feedback like to people actually building stuff for the first time. And I think that was super cool. Like I really loved that. I think that's why I like Nostr too, like getting in when I got in kind of a little bit earlier into it, like being able to just be like, hey, I can't use this button or something, and then they fix it, and that's amazing to me. I've never experienced that before in my life, so really love tech computer things now.
Very cool, very cool. And before we move to talk about the Nostr stuff, I just want to point out on the geeky side, for anybody that is messing around with their config files, always make a backup of it. Then you can screw it up all you want, and then you could just have the original there. You know, like that's just a trick. You know, that's a good trick.
I know. I think
you screw with things.
So I feel like this is something that we advise in PlebNet. I am just so reckless with it that
just make a backup, Mads.
I know. I need to do that. I'll do that this week. So
we're gonna switch gears, and we're gonna. I mean, Walton was talking about how like you're involved with Nostr. So I'm not that I'm not a fan of Nostr, but I'm just not a cheerleader. That's all. Like I accept.
Yeah, Mads is part of a centralized leadership council of the decentralized communications protocol.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, so Mads, tell us about this centralized leadership. For the decentralized protocol.
So this is, I think, the same thing I was talking about that got me to one of the things that I got excited about with Lightning, about being able to be in, like, try something early, like just recklessly try it and give feedback, and then see your feedback actually be put into something that you use. That is really exciting to me. So I pretty much follow, when I'm active on social media, which is rare, I will like just go and try anything. Like someone puts a new Bitcoin app, I'm like, okay, I'll download it and try it out. And I guess some Bitcoiners probably put out, like, we're talking about Nostr stuff. Someone I followed on Twitter was talking about Damus, and you know, I was like, oh, a test flight. You know, that's something I've never, you know, experienced a few years ago. So I was like, oh, I can do this test flight app. So I would download anything like that and try it out. And it just instantly was very similar to, I felt like the early days of PlebNet, just like a bunch of people trying to learn how to use something at the same time, and also giving feedback to the people building it. And so I had a lot of fun using Nostr, mainly on Damus back in December, January times. And yeah, I'm really bad about social media in general, so I sometimes check it once a week. Sometimes someone sends me something and then I look like in a text or something, so I go and check on Twitter or Damus, or on Nostr. I mainly use Damus on my phone, but I have tried out like 10 probably different Nostr apps at this point, maybe more. Like, I will try any app out. I love being able to test things and break them, because I think I'm very good at breaking stuff.
So have you tried Primal?
Yes.
Arcade?
Yes.
City? Arcade Labs? Yeah.
Yeah, I have something from them. I don't know. I can't remember. I've definitely have something on my
I think
phone.
they have encrypted DMs.
Oh, that's cool. I just don't get on social media a lot, so I don't really know what's happening lately with things, but I need to like dive back in for a little bit, check it out. It's kind of what I do. I dive in, like, find out stuff, and then I go back to the regular world where I can't be like as involved day to day on social media, as some people.
Twitter's a complete train wreck, so you're not missing anything there. That's just become worse, as if you could imagine that. But yeah, that's just become worse. But in terms of Noster, I was also part of the test flight. So my job prior to any of this this type of stuff, like I was technical support, but also I did QA, which was quality assurance, right? So taking pieces of software and essentially going through a whole bunch of things and figuring out, like what breaks, what doesn't, clicking every single button, going through every single type of user scenario. So I also was part of the test flight group for the original Noster. And I mean, look, let me rephrase that, for the Damus app. Okay, so I was a test. I test flew.
Yeah, me too. Like November last year or something like that.
Exactly. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I thought it was a really cool start. I do appreciate it. I like it. I like the interface. I mean, look, the reality is that it should be very similar to a Twitter type of experience, because this is what people are used to. So it's kind of like, you get people in with something that they're used to, that they feel comfortable with, because, and this is something that you end up learning, like people don't like to feel stupid, right? Like, think about it, right? Like how many devices that you use that make you feel stupid, where you go back and you want to use them again? No, like if you feel stupid using something, like, fuck this, I'm not using this. Like you want to use something like, yeah.
I think I'm a little different there. I think I'm the person that it's not, I don't sit there and think I feel stupid. I feel like I could learn something here. Like I'm there's something I don't know and I want to know about it. Like that's why I think I get so excited about this stuff, because I know I'm not like smart in this area. I know nothing. But I also know that, like, at least like my experience with Damus and just Noster in general, I am like so close to the people that know everything. Mm-hmm. And to be able to first ask them my questions, which may be really stupid questions, but then actually get responses, very kind, answers explaining something like extremely simple that was just obvious, that really is just a stupid, like kind of like blonde moment. I being able to communicate like that with those people is crazy to me. I mean, people that are building this stuff. And so I just think of it as an opportunity to like learn the next thing. I do think that's where I'm different. I do think that that's why I ended up actually going through with setting up and running my Lightning node. I mean, my background knowledge to me like proves that because I did it, anyone can do it. But you do have to have like the obsessiveness that I had to stay with it, and the curiosity to keep learning all the new stuff, because everything I use in the Bitcoin world, though, I feel stupid using. So that's, to me, I can't just be like, I feel stupid, I'm not going to use it, because then I wouldn't be able to use Bitcoin.
I think that's key, right? Patience and persistence. I guess I should have clarified it. I'm talking about the user experience, right? Like when you go through
but still
using something and it makes you feel stupid, like people like to go through stuff that's intuitive. Like we're not talking about quality assurance testing, but just the average everyday person, like let's say opening a car door, or something like that, just like a simple user experience.
And I know
that they did that Damus made like something familiar,
Well, I mean, my dad, my husband, and my brother, I got them all on there. And
on Damus?
Yes. Yeah. And on Noster and through Damus. But yeah. And their experiences were maybe a little more frustrated, or like, I just don't want to use this than mine was. But yeah, I clearly realized I have a like real curious like gene in me that just drives me to learn about things like this.
So for the Bitcoin companies out there, if you don't understand yet, Mads would be an awesome QA engineer. Okay, so there you go.
Maybe. I don't know about that. I don't know what I'd engineer, but I would love a job.
There's the expression foolproof, right? And so you need a fool, I think, is the idea to make it foolproof.
Absolutely. And I will be the fool. I will, yes, if you pay me, for sure.
So, but before we wrap up the interview section, what was Nostrica? What was that? Because I heard about it very quickly, and I was just like, what, already?
This thing happened very quickly. It was amazing. So other than just being like trying to just be like a stress tester out using Bitcoin things. I my like role in the Bitcoin world is kind of unsure, I guess, because my background is in fashion design and I've like worked at clothing boutiques. I love art. I do painting, drawing, photography. I've done like any kind of art you can imagine. That's what was into, and now I'm very into Bitcoin. So my trying to find like a role in the Bitcoin world is like that's something I am always doing. But I love like bringing people together, educating people and stuff. And so I volunteer a lot of times just to do things like that. I've helped out like in a small capacity volunteering like TabConf in Atlanta. It's really awesome. Everyone should go. And also at Bitcoin Park in Nashville, they let me help out there with some of their summits and stuff. And then my dad and I also briefly taught a Bitcoin class to high schoolers through like Me Premier Bitcoin's Bitcoin diploma, which was really awesome. So anyway, I just like I volunteer myself for a lot of things. And Jack Dorsey posted it was in January, like, hey, who would want to do a conference, a Nostr conference? Like if people help organize, if I help organize, who would come? And a bunch of people said they'd come. I had reached out and said, oh, I'd love to help out. I would definitely want to go, but I love organizing events and I think it'd be super fun. And yeah, there were a handful of us that kind of stepped out like that. And all of a sudden we're planning a conference in less than 3 months in Costa Rica for almost 300 people came, and it was really amazing. So some people told me it was the best tech conference they've ever been to, which is great. My parents came and my husband, and they all have different knowledge of what Nostr and Bitcoin like. Their knowledge levels are very diverse on those things, and they all loved it. You couldn't really not love it in Costa Rica. We were down in Bitcoin jungle in Uvita, which you can pay in Bitcoin for dinner, housing, experiences, everything at the farmers market. You can accept everyone at the farmers market in Uvita and Dominical, the nearby town, except Lightning, which was awesome. Like it's really cool. So the Bitcoiner in me, and then like the excited about Nostr and decentralized communication part of me had a great time. And yeah, I thought it was a wonderful event. And everyone should go to, I'm about to say it wrong, Nostrasia in Japan. Yeah, in November. Yeah.
All right, so that's the next one that's coming up, Nostrasia.
Yes. And I'm not as involved in that planning this go around. I think like one international volunteer trip a year, maybe like my max. But we'll see. Who knows? It's really fun. I mean, I love the community. That's like what I love about the Bitcoin world. I really love the people that I've met. And so I just don't do the social media. I don't listen to a lot of the content. I stay a little bit under the rock. I know Bitcoin just blocks keep getting mined, and that's how I am relaxed at night. But I really love getting together with people at conferences or whatever. And if I can help out and volunteer, then like it's even better for me, because I probably don't understand half the talks at some of the things anyway.
Oh, Mads, we really appreciate you explaining that. And would you happen to know when Nostrasia is?
It is November. Hold on. I want to say it's like November 1st through 3rd, but I could
okay,
be
we'll try to dig that up for the
yeah. I should know. I should know. I'm so many dates,
okay,
but
I think an organizer will give you a pass. I
think it's November 1st through 3rd. And yeah, I'm still willing to help out in any way I can, but it's so different. The culture in Japan is such a different thing. I think we're really leaning on people that are some of the locals to help with stuff. There are a lot of expats in Uvita and Costa Rica, so communicating, there wasn't a language barrier. We had Bitcoiners on the ground, to help us out, do a lot of the heavy lifting, but communicating with them and all. So my role in that was a little different than, I don't know that there's a real true role for me with the Asia conference. So I'm okay with that, because it was fun doing one, one per year. I think my family was like, you know, wait, you're doing a lot of work, you're not getting paid for it, and you're paying to go on a trip. This seems like a good way
Bitcoin.
yeah, it seems like a good way to spend all your money and not save it. So until I get a job that pays me instead of just volunteering, I kind of have to keep my expenses down a little bit.
All right, Bitcoin companies, you heard it. Mads will be your QA tech. Okay.
Oh, tech.
So,
Wow.
well, you didn't want to, you sounded skittish about the engineer part. So I changed it to make you feel a little bit less skittish, right? And QA tech, but really it's QA engineer. Okay. So
I mean, I might be more comfortable with engineer.
Okay, fine.
In fashion, one of my fashion design teachers said that fashion design is very much like engineering, because we take a design, 2D objects, make them into 3D. You know, we do a lot of patterns, mock-ups, you know, construction of our fashion items. So it's very engineering-esque, you know. So maybe engineer fits better. Tech is a little like scary to me. Tech seems like more technical.
All right, so then fair enough. Well, we'll stick with the engineer stuff.
Yeah, I'm really selling myself a low level tech engineer experience.
Junior engineer.
Just a person that breaks things.
I like it. I like it. All right, this was absolutely an awesome chat, diving into these topics, and we are gonna move on over to REKT.
Up next, we have REKT, sponsored by Represent Art, a phenomenal clothing brand, making some custom items, but also a wide range that are very available and at an excellent price. If you head over to representltd.com, you can find their wide selection of apparel and accessories, and if you use the code PlebUnderground, you'll get an excellent discount. Once again, that's representltd.com. Check them out. Up next, we have REKT. And for the first story, I'm going to show you a couple of things going on in the world of shitcoinery, and we can decide who's been. I want you to, in fact, what we're going to do, you're going to vote who's most REKT this week out of the three things that I show you. All right, so the first one. David Bailey trying to sell ordinals, the CEO of BTC Inc., the owner of Bitcoin Magazine, trying to sell NFTs, inscriptions and ordinals, and it looks like they're not selling. That's number one. Number two, at least they're not NFTs on BSV, maybe, because you know, these are some beautiful pictures here, as we can see. Just wow, beautiful stuff. Thank you, Hodlnaut. And then finally, Sam apparently is going to jail. So who's most REKT? BSV, NFTards, probably. I mean, David Bailey can't sell ordinals, or Sam going back to jail. Please cast your vote.
All right, Mads, you mentioned that you're an artist, so I definitely want to get your take on this first.
I was gonna vote for SBF because, I mean, all he had to do was not get angry at his ex-girlfriend and like send letters from her or whatever out to the media to not go back to jail. I mean, he was home free, essentially. Like he was like, had the best deal ever, and he just ruined it. So it's pretty bad.
But she cut a deal, right? That's sort
yeah,
of
that's why he was angry and like
seemingly
leaking her letters, but that didn't help him out, you know. Just
I honestly feel like it's a really tough call. It's a really tough call because, I mean, okay, so I mean, to Mads's point, right? Like, he shouldn't have been leaking the letters, but at the same time, does this really just mean that he didn't donate enough to the right people? Apparently, he was right. He wasn't as generous as he claimed, right? He was talking about being a philanthropist and altruistic, and obviously he wasn't donating as much as he claimed, because if he was, he wouldn't be going back to jail. So,
do you think he's going to get Hillary Clinton?
Oh, you think she's going to make the call?
I don't know.
No, I don't think so. But that is a good thing to think about. I don't think so.
I mean, so first it was Epstein, you know, running money for politicians, and then it was SBF. Like, I don't know, like these people seem to get done. I mean, I don't, you know, maybe they're also terrible people. It's probably true, but
he's too immature to have been trusted with too much. Like he's too immature there. Like Epstein seems like he was, you know, he had to get taken out because he had like all the info and he had it categorized and like recorded very well.
They're all spooks. They're all
SBF,
spooks.
like,
yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
But no, I know. But I'm just saying, like, no one. He's not he's too mature for them to trust with that much. I mean,
also he seems right. It's like the Prime Minister of England was Boris Johnson, who seems like a complete clown, but he's not complete. Like it's sometimes powerful people or people who are trying to become powerful play a bit of a fool because it can make, you know, people lower their guards and that they can take advantage of that.
I mean, I can see this. It's like Jessica Simpson, isn't she the one that said, is it chicken or shrimp? And then she like became famous for like the do y'all know what I'm talking about?
What, the chicken of the sea thing?
Yeah, the chicken of the sea. She's like, is it chicken or is it
shrimp is the chicken of the sea, you mean?
And she was like she made a very like dumb comment, but it, like rose her way to fame. She's like got a lot of money. I mean, good for her. This is not how I understand these things.
So to me, the vote. Did you vote yet, Phil? Sorry.
I just rambled about a bunch of different.
You're just thinking it out.
They're all wrecked. I mean,
they're all wrecked. To me, David Bailey is the most wrecked here because Bitcoin Magazine calls itself the most trusted voice in Bitcoin, and while this ordinal stuff been going on, it's been undermining. I think there's many plebs out there who see some good work that Bitcoin Magazine is doing, especially in the print space, you know, and most recently, you know, we saw Mark get a promotion to become editor-in-chief of the magazine, friend of the show, Mark Goodwin. You know, that's definitely a good move. You know, he's got a lot of integrity. But this ordinal stuff has it's just looked it's looked so cheap. It's like I was in London this past weekend, and like with a tourist, did some touristy stuff, and there aren't the little tourist stuffs like shops right next to some of the, you know, really fancy buildings. Why? Because it like cheapens it, and it's the same sort of thing with Bitcoin Magazine. It's like you've got this, you know, seemingly prestigious you know, media empire. And it's just being cheapened by selling like stickers, right? Like it's a bit of an embarrassment, right? And I personally think David should like start backing off and should devolve Bitcoin Magazine, because he's what he's doing around the space, I think, is tarnishing Bitcoin Magazine's power in the wider space, because crypto is incredibly damaging to many people who don't know better. And whilst David Bailey is pushing shitcoiners and taking their sponsorship money and pushing ordinals, he's corrupting a powerful platform that should be used as a tool for you know, increasing the integrity of Bitcoin, and he's muddying the waters with this shit.
Okay, firstly, I feel like the souvenir shop by a fancy place, I think there are always souvenir stores, cheap souvenir stores near like big attractions. But okay, that's just me. I haven't spent a lot of time in London, so I don't know. I don't hate it. Like, I don't love it, but I don't hate the ordinals thing, because I don't feel like they're shoving ordinals down your throat. I just think they're like, here, if you have them and you want to spend money on them, like, here you go. I don't know. To me, it's not the end of the world. It's not great, but it's not the end of the world. Also, David Bailey is a fellow Alabamian. So like, and he's also how my like long story of how I know about Bitcoin. So like a little partial there, but I feel like the ordinals thing is, it's like, it's there. It doesn't affect anything else to me. Like, if you want to buy and sell ordinals, you can. It's not a full like shitcoin thing, but I don't love like their history of shitcoin stuff at Bitcoin Mag. Okay. I definitely don't like that. I also know that they're trying to like walk the line of being like relevant everywhere and relevant in Bitcoiner land. And like, I know that that's been tricky and will probably always be tricky because y'all are going to come out, everyone's going to come out and hate if they go over the line a tiny bit to like the masses with anything crypto, which I'm very against anything crypto. So I don't know. I just don't think their ordinals thing is like that terrible.
Yeah, so I mean, there's different parts to. We'll move on to the next part of REKT after this. But look, I understand where you're coming from, and I think that the whole issue, I think for a lot of us, okay, is that Bitcoin Magazine, to Walton's point, right? They're supposed to kind of be this signal for Bitcoin, this like. I mean, at least this is the way that some of us envision it, that they're supposed to be this kind of like high quality signal for Bitcoin. And the thing is this, right? I don't give a shit what they sell. But I think that they shouldn't be disingenuous about it. So sad.
I think the magazine has more followers than any other Bitcoiner, no?
Let me just, I apologize. Let me just finish this. And the problem is, right? The problem is that they're marketing them as rare sats. That's the problem, okay? These are not rare sats. Sats are already rare. Sats don't even exist. Like, we're not even going to get into that, but like, it's like, so this whole idea, right, is like complete bullshit. So I think if they're going to sell it and say, hey, we're going to make this fucking tchotchke thing on Bitcoin, then call it a fucking tchotchke, right? Like, call it a doodle, call it whatever the fuck, but don't create this narrative that it is some possible high quality, rare Satoshi thing. Like, that's fucking nonsense. Like, to me, like that's my problem.
Okay.
With it,
I mean, I hear that. I also, who's to say anything's rare or valuable? Like when you become more and more of a Bitcoiner, all the like things that I loved before are just not anymore. What is Walton doing?
Walton's sharing his screen while you're talking.
I'm sharing a screen with the prime thing here.
I know, but
the Bitcoin Magazine pushing.
Oh, the rare. Okay. I see it.
100 inscriptions, and the point that I was trying to raise before, and I rudely interrupted. Apologies.
How many people are there?
9 million followers. They have 2.9 million followers, and I don't know about you, but to me, that's more than any other Bitcoin account that I know of. I mean, maybe there's some. I don't know. Maybe Pomp's got similar numbers, but he's not. Pomp's Pomp, right? Like Bitcoin Magazine, I think are on the right side of Pomp for now.
Just what means something's rare? I mean, people collect like stamps and coins and whatever, and I think it's just the same thing. I mean, some people really love stamp collecting, and or coin collecting, like. To me, at some point soon, I feel like coins, the value of them is going to be like what, like physical, like mineral you can melt them down to, because other than that, they're pretty worthless. So
many coins are actually worth less than the metal that they're made of, but in many countries, it's illegal to melt down the coinage, and so.
Yeah, I'm not advising that.
This weird arbitrage currently going on, where actually people could, but there's a criminal risk involved.
So I didn't know the criminal part of it. That's my point. I mean, it's the value of the actual what it can do for you. So if it can make you happy because you own it, and owning something that you deem valuable is value to you. That's I don't know, that's the whole thing. It was just how ordinals is all it is. It's just naming, or like a way to number and identify every single Satoshi, and that numbering system gives them specific numbers, which some people want those specific numbers.
Sats don't exist. Only UTXOs exist.
Okay.
Sats are imaginary. This is the point. This is exactly the point.
This is why these arguments happen, okay?
It's a shared hallucination. I believe Casey himself said that.
Yes, but it can identify all the different bits of a UTXO, whatever you want to call it. It's there.
I think we're going to agree to disagree there, Mads. But
okay.
you know,
Well,
let's go to the next
but I
part
have
of
one more story.
we are not
If I
solving
may,
this
just
issue.
briefly, guys.
We're not solving this issue.
All I'm saying is it's just the numbering system that's applied to something, and you can decide it's valuable or not. And I don't know. I don't feel like they're being like disingenuous.
I like that. Fine.
I don't feel that they're being as disingenuous as y'all feel, but I understand that we can agree to disagree on the level of disingenuousness.
There's a zone, right? There's like what do they call that? There's there's a gradient, right? A gradient to the disingenuousness, you know?
Look, we have a strict sponsor policy that we won't push anything that can get people wrecked. To me, ordinals is something that can get people wrecked, and if you're pushing that, you're being disingenuous, because you're ultimately selling something that I think relies on greater fool theory if you're putting money in with the expectation of making profit, because, like, you know, okay, collectible, but it's like, it's not like
uncommon sats matter, Walton. Uncommon sats matter, okay?
Yeah, I mean, to me, they're all uncommon because they're all limited.
That's true. I agree. I'm on board with that.
But what about the ones maybe they're just being that aren't really tied to them, but are somewhat tied to them because of this third-party numbering system, which is really just a database? Those are really uncommon.
But here's the thing: maybe they're not being that disingenuous because all sats are rare, so they're just promoting some more rare sats. All the sats are rare.
No sats matter. No sats matter. Anyway, moving on. Guys, we have one more story in REKT this week. And holy shit, Lisa saying, friend of the show, Nifty Nay, GitHub activity on libbitcoin stopped around the time the first potential exploit of the bug happened on mainnet. Now, why? What's the implication you're making? She says that someone on the team knew. Lots of likes of that. Maybe they were just alerted around this time and then just said, fuck this. Definitely possible. And then Eric Voskel, who I believe is on the team, correct me if I'm wrong, said pretty much anything is possible. It's also possible you're all just talking out of your collective asses. Now, this is my understanding is there's a Bitcoin wallet that was using essentially an insecure algorithm to produce keys. Is that a fair description of it, Phil? I think that's my understanding, at least. Because they weren't using sufficient randomness. They were using some kind of like toy randomness generator that would only be appropriate maybe in test environments, and they were using it on some live and this has led to people losing funds.
So which wallet?
This is a very terrible thing, and again, another reason why you should really be considering what your Bitcoin security is, and really looking into what you're using, because there are a whole range of things, and some people do things more secure than others.
So which wallets were affected? So like what, like wallet company apps, whatever interfaces, whatever they're called.
So far, what I have here is that libbitcoin is a Bitcoin wallet implementation used by various applications, including Airbits, Bitprim, Blockchain Commons, and CanCoin. And Slomis did not specify which applications are affected by the vulnerability. So it doesn't sound like we know every wallet that's affected, or every software developer that used their library, but essentially. Here we go. Vulnerability in the libbitcoin Explorer 3 library. So it looks like the wallets were using this library to generate the seeds. So, and the vulnerability is in the actual library itself. So I'm not seeing right now how many different types of wallets are affected, but I mean, I will say this though, right? I had heard of libbitcoin when I first, around, I feel like 2019, And I was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, 2019 is correct, Phil. Yeah.
I'm sorry? 2019? Yeah.
It came out 2019, yeah.
I was just like, what is this? You know, like to me, it just didn't. And again, it's not like I know any better, but I think so number one, I think it proves the case for anybody who has a single sig wallet to use a passphrase at the very least, because the 25th word can technically stop. I mean, at least to my knowledge, can stop that type of attack because you have to be able to put that in order to sign a transaction. So, or at least to access the wallet, which they can't do without it. So at the very least, you get safety with that. I don't know, man. I think the other piece to this that I don't like is that shitcoiners are using it to FUD Bitcoin and say that Bitcoin was hacked. So it's not Bitcoin. It's not Bitcoin core code that was hacked. Okay, it was a specific library that was used to generate wallets. So it's not the same. Sorry. Yeah, I don't even wallet.
It's like part wallets. I think essentially this comes down to open source development, right? Like different people build different bits of some application or stack, and if you're not building the whole thing yourself, then you're trusting someone else to build it. And if you're a wallet developer using other library, using like different libraries, then you're dependent on those. And in the same way that if you're providing a service to a customer, in the real world, your relationship with your suppliers should be your responsibility. The same is true in the open source world. Even if the wallet, maybe it's being provided for free, you should still, be managing that supply relationship, managing the dependencies for your project, for your business.
So I'm going to provide. Oh, sorry, Mads, go ahead.
My question is, like, for any wallet app or whatever the normal wallets people use, is there like some other library other than just Bitcoin? They all have libraries.
I mean, to be honest, that's beyond my scope of knowledge. Like, I know that there are different libraries and like different, different engineers that create them. I don't know what they can use instead. I mean, I'm assuming that there's obviously something else. Otherwise, every single wallet to a certain extent would be vulnerable to this. But I did want to add this, okay, to Walton's.
Okay, sorry. Yes, yeah. other libraries than libbitcoin, but they all have to have like some type of library is what I'm asking. Yeah. Like, okay, so that's a thing. Like everyone has like libraries beyond their wallet. I don't know about these library things.
I mean, it's essentially just like, think of it like this, right? And I could be oversimplifying it, but I like a DLL file, okay? Like,
don't know what that is.
Okay, so a DLL file in, like, let's say in Windows, right, is a dynamic link library. So what that is so imagine this, right? Let's say you have a piece of software that calls a specific function, okay? So what you would do to simplify that function is that in the software, it would call only that file, and that file knows to call multiple other files.
Okay.
To its work. So that's like a DLL. So in this case, the library does something similar. Rather than having to go and rebuild all your own little files in order for it to go and generate this data, you would simply just point to that file and it would then follow its script and generate the data that you need. So you're like, essentially you're calling like a third party in a way.
Okay.
In a way,
Okay.
But it's not really. It's in your own code.
Let's say you're running a fashion shop, Mads, and you buy instead of sewing all of your things from individual threads, you actually buy linen. You buy different fabrics from people. That's essentially what's happened here. They bought some fabrics that were insecure, and then someone else made some dresses, and some people got exposed. It sounds terrible. It was.
Okay.
So I just wanted to add as well, and Walton, I appreciate that analogy. That's an interesting one. I just wanted to add from that link, Eric Voskuil, a member of the libbitcoin Institute, right, which you showed his tweet, stated that the BX seed command is not intended for production wallets, and changes may be made to strengthen the warning against its use or remove the command altogether. So I mean, this is not that it's unknown.
They all have these warnings, right? This is beta software. Like, if you use it, it's your fault. Like, go fuck yourself. You're gonna die. Like, we don't care. Like, that's your fault. Like, but you're opting in. Just know, something like that.
Okay, that's absolutely. And guys, that does it for REKT. I mean, be safe out there. Be safe out, unless you have another story, Walton. But I think that's it for REKT. Huh?
No, that's it. That's enough REKT for this week.
All right, sweet. Yeah, that was definitely REKT. All right, guys, we are moving on over to the Hopium.
The Hopium.
The Hopium is brought to you by Crypto Cloaks. Check them out, cryptocloaks.com. Awesome 3D prints made by fellow Bitcoiners. Did you guys see the Wall Street Bull? That was absolutely amazing. Totally 3D printed by Crypto Cloaks. And check out the awesome 3D printed grenade where the pin just dropped, but it's okay. Nothing bad actually happens. You can fit an open dime. Get the bigger one, and you can fit a full signing device / hardware wallet, which doesn't really exist. Check them out, cryptocloaks.com. It's a signing device. All right, everybody, for the Hopium, I feel like for the most part, the space is at a standstill with this stupid spot ETF thing and everybody arguing about BlackRock and all this stuff. So anyways, we're going to get into that. But first, right, going back to the numbers, we were talking about housing prices. We were talking about interest rates. Well, let's take a look at this little video here where Jerome Powell explains the intricacies of the 2% inflation rate. Here we go.
For the general public, for those working families and people, why 2%? Why is getting it to 2% so important?
So that has become the globally agreed, essentially all major central banks target 2% inflation in one form or another.
How does that help my Nevada families? How does that help people in Nevada?
I'll tell you how it does. And it's I guess it's obviously not, it's not obvious how that is, but 2% inflation, to have people believe that inflation is going to go back to 2% really anchors inflation there, because the evidence is and the modern belief is that people's expectations about inflation actually have an effect on inflation. If you expect inflation to go up 5%, then it will. If everyone kind of expects that, because that's what businesses and households will be expecting, and it'll kind of happen because they expect it. So
I just want to point out a few things here. It's not obvious that it's obvious. That was one specific thing that he said that made no sense to me at all. Okay, it's
he was
not
avoiding.
Obvious. Yeah, exactly, because he's tap dancing. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about, and he's not. And I don't blame him, right? Like a lot of times, like people sit there and they're like, oh, it's the person. No. Listen, it makes no fucking sense, because it makes no fucking sense. Like, we came up with this number out of thin air. And everyone just holds on to it like it means something, but it's exactly what he said. That second piece. If people believe that we need to have it at that number, then we need to have it at that number. Like,
Phil, two things.
Are they saying the quiet part out loud, Walton? Are they saying
the reason why everyone has this number is not because there's some global consensus. It's because if each country has approximately the same inflation, interest rates stay approximately the same. And it means that the psyop of getting poorer is harder to see between countries.
Good point. Very good point.
I think it's also like you get, there's kind of competing trade around interest rates, and so you do not interest rate around exchange rates, and so you do want them to be relatively stable.
Mags, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, I mean, I do
Jerome
think
just bumbling around.
Quiet part said out loud. Yeah. If you say rare sats or rare sats, they're rare sats.
Are you trying to make this an ordinals thing again? I knew it as soon as you said you were into art. I'm like, God damn it.
No, actually, I literally do not love ordinals, but it's the same thing though. It's if you say it and it's it, and then you believe it.
So is money a shared delusion? I've had this discussion, right?
Yes.
So is money a shared delusion? Is it only partially a shared delusion? Because I really feel like inflation. I
think the U.S. dollar
is
a shared delusion. at this
I
point.
can't disagree with that. It is a shared delusion backed by violence. So
It used to be backed by by a little bit more, and now it's not.
Phil, I do think though that he's cherry picking in terms of he said about
he is.
that if individuals believe that inflation is 5%, then it is 5%. To some degree, he's right with this, in that if you believe that prices are going up a certain amount, you put your prices up a certain amount, maybe, to try and match it, maybe. But that he's missing the point. That's all downstream from the money being debased causes some people to have to put their prices up, and that kind of ripples through economies, and in doing so disrupts supply chains. And I think over the last few years, you keep seeing this, right? Your different local stores just don't seem to have like one or two products, because and then suddenly they do a month later and it's 15 to 20% more than the last batch.
I feel like they're just normalizing theft. I mean, like, that's all it is, right? It's just normalizing theft, because at the end of the day, we all get in our heads, right, this number. And then all of a sudden, it just becomes totally fine that, hey, look, guys, I mean, look, we're printing all of this and we're at the 2%. I mean, 2% of a bigger number becomes a much bigger number. You know, like, I'm not a genius, and you can tell by the
2%.
comment.
I think 2% mortgage rate over 2% mortgage rate over 25 years. I think still nets the bank something like 60% on top of the value of the house. Like 2% over a long time is a lot of money.
It's a good point, and I just think that we're surrounded by insane people. And Jerome Powell just proved it.
Yeah,
what were you
I will
say?
say, in teaching Bitcoin to high schoolers, teaching about inflation was about the easiest thing we did, because it was like, go to your store this week, and the next week let's do that again and see that the prices have gone up. And that was like, the kids grasped that faster than anything else. The kid didn't take a lot of explaining. Once we started talking about it, we're like, you've seen the prices go up, and everyone.
All conversations about Bitcoin should start with inflation. Like, it should be talking about what is this problem, what's causing it, what's behind it, how is it affecting us, what is it going to do in the future, and what's the orange lifeboat that you can hopefully use to hedge yourself against it long term.
So I didn't plan to show anything, but I'm totally going to show the Bitcoin diploma, because that's how it's set up. So Mi Premier Bitcoin, they started in El Salvador after Bitcoin became like a national currency, I guess, in El Salvador. They wanted to educate kids on it. It's incredible. Like, if you were ever to go out and just look for a Bitcoin like textbook, where do you find one? And that's what I was looking for when my dad and I found out we got allowed to teach a Bitcoin class to high schoolers, and that it was starting in about a day from when we found out we were good to go. So I did a lot of research, and it's amazing. I don't even know the numbers that they've gotten to now. They have thousands of graduated students now, but the way it's set up is it's how I understand Bitcoin. It focuses on the problems. It explains like our current system and all the things that's wrong with it, and kind of leads you into the solution of Bitcoin. So anyway, it's really awesome, and it's in English now, but that's how we were teaching students. You hear the problems, and the students that my dad and I taught, it's a very underserved area in Birmingham, Alabama, and the reason that we were passionate about trying to get in there to the school and teach with them is because they are hurt the most by our current system. They experience all the problems of our current system, like the most, like, drastically, and they grasped all of that part very quickly. It was just, there was no question. They're like, everything's more expensive than it was last week. My mom's job, she's making a little more, but things are still more expensive than what she's making. It was really interesting to see how quickly they grasped onto that part of it.
Let's just hope they don't forget about it, right? Let's just hope that, because we all know what happens, the illusion of reality, all of a sudden you forget all this stuff as you're tumbling down the rabbit hole.
I know. I hope that, it felt good to just like plant that seed in their heads. stuff with the school. It's really hard to teach in a school in the US, just anything, I think. So but the teacher that we had a connection with had stuff fell through there, so we didn't finish the course. But I think that we've like planted the seed and the interest in like the students that were interested in it. Fingers crossed they haven't forgotten. So yeah, it was really interesting that they were like, yes, we know all these things are wrong. We experience this stuff daily. We can see it in our lives. You know, it was really easy with them. So that's kind of, I think, why places like the Global South they're already using Bitcoin way more than people in the, the West and the northern hemispheres are, because there's a necessity. It makes sense. It's not as, my mom doesn't understand why Bitcoin's so important because she doesn't need to use it yet every day.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It starts making sense for some people, and I think that's pretty cool. But
Absolutely.
yeah, so anyway, Me Premier Bitcoin, My First Bitcoin, everyone should check them out because it's open sourced. It's on the internet. You can like go on GitHub and get the whole curriculum.
Sweet. Give me you'll give us the link. We're going to put it in the show notes. And we are going to move on to our next story for the Hopium, the final story for the Hopium before we wrap up. This is the update so far. We're still totally getting teased here. And again, we'll discuss obviously how much we really care about this stuff. SEC likely to approve several spot ETFs, sparking the next Bitcoin rally. Oh, that sounds great. Even though nobody cares about fiat, everybody cares about fiat. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission is likely to approve several spot Bitcoin exchange traded funds in quick succession, triggering the next move higher for the world's largest digital currency. Crypto services provider Matrix said in a report on Thursday the ETF providers would spend considerable marketing expenses to draw in retail and institutional capital. That to me is a kind of an interesting point, because essentially once those spot ETFs start getting approved, we are going to start to see a whole lot more quote unquote mainstream, but let's be honest, it's corporate owned media, okay, shilling services around it. So there's no question there. The SEC will respond to Grayscale's GBTC lawsuit filing and ARK21 shares Bitcoin ETF refiling next week. Okay, and guys, this was an article that came out on Friday or Thursday. So like it was like August 10th or 11th. So this information is going to be coming out the week that this episode drops. So the regulator is expecting to respond to 7 other Bitcoin ETF filings during the first week of September, right in time for Labor Day weekend. The note said that any SEC spot ETF approval could have a material positive impact on Bitcoin's fiat exchange, and investors should have enough upside exposure on any day that the regulator is scheduled to respond to the ETF applications. I have no idea what I just read to you there. That didn't mean anything to me. Anyways, if the SEC needs more time to assess the practicality of the surveillance sharing agreements, so this is an interesting part, right? Probably the most interesting part of this whole entire article, because you see, this was one of the main points that the SEC rejected BlackRock's initial SEC filing for a Bitcoin ETF. It had to do with a lack of clarity around their surveillance sharing. Anyways, then the Bitcoin price may correct initially in mid-September, and this is the dip to buy. Okay, so
Phil, the orange bit, when it says it's saying that investors should have enough upside exposure. What they mean is that they should be invested in Bitcoin or other Bitcoin things, because they say that Bitcoin is basically going to pump, and so they're trying. It's like they're trying to give insider information. It's a weird thing, but ultimately, we should all remember ETFs are a fiat banking attack on custody of Bitcoin. Right? Bitcoin doesn't need custodians. It doesn't need intermediaries. And so you should be storing your own Bitcoin. Now, if you want to try and I mean, I find this wild. If you want to try and do tax advantageous things using lawyers and accountants and trusts and all this sort of stuff, then maybe that does involve other custody. But that's a risk you're very welcome to take. I certainly will not be taking any of those sorts of risks. Like, I just don't. It's a bearer asset, right? It's not like this is numbers that can just be replaced on a screen. You can get rugged by the lawyers, the accountants, the custodians, right? Like Prime Trust, or what's the new one called now, Phil? Like Fortress. Fortress, yeah. You can't trust these people, because ultimately due to the bearer asset nature of Bitcoin, and human desperation and human greed, you can't trust other people to hold your Bitcoin. Yep. And like you don't need to. You really don't need to. It's really quite simple. Like, you can do mobile first multi-sig on an iPhone and a couple of taps of a couple of devices. Like, it's to create, wallets these days, to have your own custody is so easy. It's easier as ever been, and it's getting easier. Yeah. And there's more and more people willing to help you learn.
That's a very good point. Mads, we haven't gotten your thoughts on the whole Bitcoin ETF thing. Have you been following it? What are your thoughts?
Yes and no. It seems like it just keeps cycling around. I don't know. I got kind of bored with it.
Right.
That's my thought. I'm like, I don't know. It's not Bitcoin. It keeps happening. ETFs keep coming up and going down, and I don't know.
Exactly. It's, and this is the thing, right? It's kind of like the carrot, right? It's like the carrot. They just sit there and like, hey, wait a second, this is coming. So I did find it really interesting, though. Like I said, that part about the surveillance sharing, this is really what all of these institutions are concerned with, I think. So I try to look at it from their incentives, right? Their incentive is they want to be able to control and monitor everything. Number one, and number two, the large financial institutions, I guess we'll call them Wall Street for lack of a better term, they want to make sure that they are the biggest players in the game. Now, with Bitcoin, as we all know, there is no corporation, there's no team that can be bought out or anything like that. Like, you can't pull the shenanigans in the same way that you can pull them in a fiat system with a corporation. So I actually think that a lot of these institutions, such as BlackRock, have obviously figured out that this is how you pull those strings. This is how you, essentially, I don't like to use the term attack Bitcoin, because it's not really an attack on Bitcoin per se, as Walton alluded to. It is the bearer asset, right? Like, it's not just the network. It is also the asset. So it's very different than anything we've ever had. And unfortunately, I think that a social attack is really the kind of one of the only ways to truly attack Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin ETF, even though I don't see a spot Bitcoin ETF as necessarily an attack, because if I'm not mistaken, there does have to be physical delivery of the Bitcoin at the end of a contract. I know it's like up in the air, right?
Theoretically, right?
Theoretically, right? So, and the thing is that are the businesses actually going to demand it, right? So let's face it, like, this is the whole, so that's why it goes back to your point, Walton, about this whole thing fucking being fiat, and this whole thing being paper trade. So it's
reintroducing a bunch of lawyers into money that literally removed lawyers from money. Yes. Like, the whole point of Bitcoin is that it's not subjective money. Like, it's objective, right? It's the same. You can witness Bitcoin the same no matter who you are. You can use Bitcoin the same no matter who you are. That's not the same thing with fiat. And when you start putting Bitcoin in the custody of fiat institutions, you're turning it into that sort of thing. That's not what we want.
No, I agree. And okay, the last thing before we wrap this up, any of your guys' thoughts on the quote unquote BlackRock fork? because I've seen some really stupid stuff on Twitter where essentially BlackRock, you know, like, yeah, obviously it's not true, but like if they were to fork Bitcoin, they're so big and powerful, they can make it so that their fork is the real Bitcoin in terms of convincing the public. I think that's nonsense. I think it's bullshit. I don't think it's possible. I think we've already gone through these types of scenarios. And the reality is BlackRock can't force me to run their software on my node.
Yeah, Phil, if you custody your Bitcoin with BlackRock, custody your Bitcoin with BlackRock, you're not running a node either, so you don't have a vote. So, but I do think the custody and the ETF, that is the bigger attack on Bitcoin than the idea of a BlackRock fork actually being a real attack.
Yeah, agreed. Mads, BlackRock.
I didn't know, had no idea about this. Don't feel like it's a threat because I mean that's why Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's why all the other random coins aren't like they're not Bitcoin. You have to be the first. You can't like be the first decentralized one like that was distributed in a decentralized way. You can't do that again. So
it's true. And just like
I didn't know about it, and I'm not that concerned. So oh well.
Totally agreed. And just like Ricky Bobby said, if you're not first, you're last. You know, so I mean, there you go.
No, they're great. Yeah. Roll Tide, Alabama. Let's bring in all the Alabama Talladega stuff, you know.
There you go. Yeah, see? Look at that. I'm even making relevant quotes. This is fantastic. We're on today. We're on today. Okay, so look, we're wrapping up the show, but before we wrap up the show, Mads, how do people find you on Twitter if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to harass you about your awesome takes about ordinals? How do they find you?
I guess I think it's Madeline _Ash. I think I figured that out
you can
earlier.
find Mads is go to KYC Jelly. Go to KYC Jelly on Twitter, and KYC Jelly only follows like 20 to 21 accounts, I believe. Mads is one of those. So the kind of KYC Jelly is the plebnet Twitter. For those of you that don't know.
Yeah, and my NPub is NP. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But
we'll post that in the show notes.
But yes, if you want to find me on Master, I'm there. I don't do social media a lot, so I'm not really there. I'm there, but I'm not there.
Okay,
so if people want to meet you, they need to go to Nostrica 2024. Is that what you're saying?
That you need to go to conferences. You need to get out and meet Bitcoiners.
She's gonna make
go
us
to Nashville.
She's gonna make us work for
Nashville.
This. All right. All right. You heard it from Mads, huh?
TabConf, Nashville, BitBlock Boom. Go to all the conferences.
So from Mads, fuck the basement, get out of the basement. This is Pleb Underground. Phil, how do we wrap things around here?
Oh man, it's my turn. Fuck shit coins.
Okay, and guys, just a reminder, if you want to catch this, we're available not just on YouTube, we're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Fountain. You can even stream our sats on Breeze. Mads, thanks for joining us. Phil,
thank you very much. Guys, we will catch you all next week.